as you know, we have a new book coming out, and it's called it's called Developing Glazes. I gave myself a challenge when I was writing the book to do all things I hadn't done before. So I've been having a lot of fun. Today, I'm going to show you how I do the work in chapter 6 called Terra Sig as an overlay, and the finish I'm going to show you is actually one of the easiest ones in the book and the most beautiful. So what I have here is I've already started work on this piece, and I've done the pour of glaze on the inside. This is Lana Wilson Chun, and the glaze recipe's in the book. And so now I'm going to show you how I do it on the outside and pour it nicely, so that even if you don't have a lot of glaze, you don't need buckets loads of glazes to do it this way. So I get my very expensive studio props. Okay. So then I'm going to put my bowl. Just going to put it over top like that. Now I'm going to get a jug full of glaze. The Wilson Chun. So, just to go over things one more time, the first thing that was done was this. When it was first made, there was the dark blue Terra Sig was brushed on this before it was bisque. Then it was bisque fired. Then it came out of the kiln. I poured this in. I've let it sit for a couple of days to dry. You could just leave it sit for a little bit if you want. If you glaze the outside right after glazing the inside, it won't take quite as much glaze, but sometimes that's nice. Sometimes you want the glaze thicker on the inside and thinner on the outside. Anyhow, so here we go. Second pour. Now I find with this glaze and my clay body, a lot of those little bubbles, so I just go around and then I just give it one more quick one. Just popping the bubbles. There's a layer of glaze under there anyways. Now you can see that there's going to be a thick layer there, but be that as it may, I happen to remember to actually wax the bottoms, so it's a miracle. Usually I remember just as I'm pouring the glaze on, and dang, forgot about waxing the bottom. So that's that. And you need to let it set a bit. I am going to show you what the next step is. Pretty soon I'm going to take that off of there. I have pieces in all different stages of development so that I can show the whole 9 yards to you. This chapter is called Terra Sig as an overlay. And this glaze is going to craze beautifully. And when we pour the Terra Sig over it, it's going to go into those craze lines, which is what makes it so exciting. Now I'm using a blue slip, and the recipe for everything is in the book. Just because I'm using a blue slip doesn't mean that you can't use all sorts of different colored slips. This whole book is about inspiring you to experiment and play, right? So you watch me playing all the way through the book, and hopefully that then shows you, oh, well, she tried that. Why shouldn't I try that? You know, let's see what happens. Okay, so let's see if this is dried off enough for me to lift it up. It is. Good. Here we go. Okay. So I'm going to take the glaze off of this, and then it's ready to go into the kiln. But I'm not going to bore you by taking all the glaze off while you're watching me. I'm just going to move on to the next step. Now, I have talked in the book a bit about how when you're pouring this, you have to be really, really mindful of how much water is in the Sig blend, like how thick it is, because if it's too thick, then you're just going to get a really solid coat. Actually, I have a piece I can show you. It's a really good example. This hasn't been fired yet, so I've already poured, well, I'm going to show it to you, but I've already poured the Terra Sig in here a couple of days ago and poured it out. And you can see how it's following the lines. So when it's fired, that's how it's going to look, only a little more blingy. If the Sig is really thick, it's not going to shrink as much, right? And so then you're going to get a whole different patternization. So you want to play around with your water level, and once you've done this a few times, you'll start to understand how it's responding to things, and you'll be able to read it, so to speak. And the other thing, this has got an undercut, so when I pour the glaze in here and then pour it out, I have to keep sort of going like this to try and get that extra sidge out. And if you flip it over, and I've done this too many times to count, too soon, then you got all these drips coming down, right? So nowadays, I just tell myself, like, do it at the end of the day. When you think you've got all the sidge out of there, just leave it, come back the next day when it's nice and dry. And if I do it earlier in the day, temptation may take me over and I might want to go on to the next step. So this is how I deal with me. Okay, so you see, here we got the chun, fairly thick coating. The glaze, the thicker it is, changes the tone of it and the size of the craze lines, but these are all things you're gonna discover. Now I have my Terra Sig, and we're just gonna go over it like that. Did I get everywhere? Whoops, I missed a spot, okay. So if I missed a spot, I go over the whole thing again so it's as even as possible. That is one stubborn little bubble. See how that's dripping down now? It's a tricky little thing, because once it's done, once it's poured, you know, it's poured. Okay, I'm gonna leave well enough alone, because otherwise I know what I'm gonna do and I'm gonna end up wrecking it. You can see over here, it's gone a little bit thinner. This is just because of the nature of the glaze itself, and you can see the craze lines and how it's just sort of going all over the place. So this is pretty much done now. I have a piece over here, and for this one, it very much like the inside of that one, but I poured the outside of it very soon after, and so I didn't get as much blue going in because of the moisture content, and I kind of like having that variance. I don't want the outside to look exactly just like the inside. So that's why that is. While we're letting this dry, I'm going to show you a couple of examples. There's quite a few in the book. This is a piece I did recently, and the dark blue slip here was also here, and then obviously didn't put the glaze over this, but so this is the dark blue slip with the Lana Wilson chun over top of it, and you can see it's really quite stunning. So how this would have come out of the bisque, its first layer of glaze rather, is with this dark top looking pretty much like that. Then this spot would have looked like this, and then the chun glaze here. And then we poured the Terra Sig over top of the whole piece. I sponged it off the neck and left it on here. So you can see a beautiful contrast where the extra Terra Sig has gone over the chun glaze and just made it even darker. Here's where the slip has started to separate. So much variety. So much variety. It's quite stunning. Here's another piece. This particular glaze, the Lana Wilson chun, with or without a Sig overlay, can be used as functional glaze. I've tested it out on some of the earthenware bowls and not had any issues with sweating or anything, and it just looks beautiful. This particular bowl is on a raku clay body. It had the orange Terra Sigillata on the outside, and then it was reduction fired. So the orange Terra Sigillata, it would have looked very much like this, and then when it goes in the kiln and gets reduction fired, the orange Terra Sigillata turns sort of a brown or a black, depending on how heavy you have the reduction set. So those are just two beautiful examples of how this glaze can be. On this piece in particular, I do plan on putting some of the Terra Sig over top, but I had a couple of spots where I guess, I don't know, I missed it. There were bits of bubbles and not enough glaze. So I put more glaze on it. I'm gonna put it back into bisque firing so that those are tidied up, and then so it's all like this. But sometimes I think with some of the pieces, when it's got that beautiful color on the inside, sometimes I just leave that plain and then just do the Terra Sig overlay on the outside. So you have that beautiful crackly blue on the outside and then that gorgeous oceanic feel on the inside. Before we wrap up, I see that this piece is actually pretty much ready to flip over. So I'm going to do that very carefully. Good. 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 The rim. It's got a little bit, the Sige is sort of splashed over top is quite normal, but you know, we don't really know quite how it's going to look, so I think to myself, the safest bet there is to just go over it with one more layer of Sige, just so it's all looking nice and even. Just putting that over top. I can see some dry bits. Get this a little bit more watery. The reason why I'm keeping on going like this is if there's any sort of drips, the more times around I go, the more it just kind of gets worn down so it's all the same. Okay, I'm going to leave it alone before I make a happy day into a sad day. And then this piece will go into the kiln. Okay, so how cool is that? Super easy, play around, and just because I'm using the Lana Wilson Chun recipe that I have in the book on these pieces doesn't mean that you can't use this technique with other glazes. As you know, most glazes craze, so if it's crazing, that gives you an opportunity to sneak something into those lines and play with it. Now, and don't forget, the book's the fundraisers for the Legacy Project, Potters Helping Potters, and we're fundraising for artist housing, so every time you buy the book, the royalties are being donated and you're helping Potters of today and tomorrow. Glaze on!